Tuesday, 3:17 p.m. River Point Mall's polished tile floors reflected the overhead fluorescent lights like sheets of glass. The hum of air conditioning mixed with the muffled thud of footsteps, shopping bags crinkling, and distant music spilling from chain stores. To most, it was an ordinary weekday. Parents dragged restless children toward the food court. Teenagers clustered in packs near the arcade. Retirees shuffled leisurely past storefront displays. But inside Millstone Department Store, in front of the women's shoe section, a confrontation was unfolding that would become anything but ordinary. Erica Grant, age 39, stood at the checkout counter. She had come directly from the Capitol building, where her office occupied the 12th floor. Her navy blue pantsuit was tailored perfectly, her silver chain understated but elegant, her black leather handbag structured and professional. A portfolio under her arm contained work documents she had been reviewing between errands. She had stopped in for one simple purchase, a pair of comfortable heels she could wear to evening events. Nothing flashy. Nothing that should have drawn attention. Yet the cashier hesitated with every movement, scanning her items with visible unease. Behind Erica, a mall security guard whispered into a radio. A woman browsing perfume leaned in close, whispering to her friend while side-eyeing Erica's bag. The tension solidified when two uniformed police officers strode into the store, radios crackling. Their presence sucked the air out of the room. Officer Brian Cooper, broad-shouldered, graying at the temples, already wore the kind of scowl that presumed guilt. Behind him, Officer Ashley Reynolds, younger and clearly less confident, adjusted her belt nervously as they approached. "Ma'am," Cooper barked, voice carrying across the store. "Step away from the counter." Erica blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" Her voice was calm, measured, professional. "You fit the description of a shoplifting suspect," Cooper continued, raising his chin. "Step away from the merchandise, now." Customers turned their heads. A ripple of whispers spread through the aisles. Someone's phone came up, camera lens pointed directly at Erica. She straightened her back, drawing herself to her full height. At 5'6", she wasn't imposing, but there was something unshakable in her bearing. Years of commanding rooms filled with politicians, auditors, and attorneys. "I haven't taken anything," she said evenly. "I'm standing here paying for these shoes." Reynolds fumbled with her notepad, adding nervously, "We received a call. Someone reported you concealing items in your bag." All eyes shifted to Erica's handbag. Structured, zipped, professional. Hardly the tote a shoplifter would use. Without hesitation, she lifted it onto the counter. "You're welcome to search it," she said calmly. "Here, in front of everyone. I have nothing to hide." But Cooper wasn't satisfied. He sneered. "Step away from the bag. Hands where I can see them." The cashier froze, caught between customer service and fear of authority. Erica exhaled through her nose, placing both hands flat on the counter. "There," she said softly. A teenager whispered from across the aisle, "This don't make no sense. She didn't even leave the register." His friend muttered, "Shh, don't say nothing. You'll get dragged into it." Cooper's hand went to his cuffs. "Turn around. You're being detained for theft." The words detonated. Gasps erupted from shoppers. Reynolds hesitated. She glanced at Erica, composed, dignified, utterly unflustered. Something in her gut screamed that this was wrong. But Cooper's tone carried the weight of authority, and training told her to follow. She reached for the cuffs. "You are making a mistake," Erica said, her voice low, steady, cutting through the hum of the store. Her wrists clicked into cold steel anyway. Phones shot up higher. At least 5 different shoppers now recorded. A young woman near the perfume counter, Jasmine Parker, 21, a college student, whispered into her phone mic, "Y'all, look at this. They're cuffing this lady for shoplifting and she hasn't even left the register. She's in a business suit. Something's off." Her livestream viewer count jumped from 120 to 700 in under a minute. Comments began scrolling furiously. Classic case of shopping while black. "Name them all. I'm tagging the ACP. If she's who I think she is, these cops are done." Erica's calm expression didn't waver. She turned her eyes to Cooper, locking onto him with precision. "Do you know who I am?" He smirked. "Yeah, a thief." "No," Erica replied, her voice dropping into deliberate authority. "I am Erica Grant, the State Auditor, and by cuffing me without probable cause in front of witnesses, you've just created a liability your department cannot afford." The store fell silent. For a beat, no one moved. Then the murmurs rose again, sharper, angrier. Jasmine's stream crossed 2,000 viewers. Screenshots began circulating on Twitter under Auditor in cuffs. Reynolds froze, her hands trembling around the cuffs. "Wait, what did you just say?" "I said," Erica repeated firmly, "I am the State Auditor. My office oversees every dollar spent by this state, and you have just put me in handcuffs in a department store, without checking ID, without evidence, without cause. Do you realize what you've done?" Cooper's smirk faltered, but pride held him rigid. "Anybody can claim they're important. We've heard it before." Erica tilted her head slightly. "Then check. Call your chief. Call the governor's office. Call whoever you like, but do it quickly, because every second you delay, this live stream grows." The chat exploded. "If this is real, they're finished. She sounds official, F. Somebody tag the governor right now." Mall security supervisor Kyle Anderson arrived, summoned by the growing commotion. His name badge glinted under the lights. He froze when he saw Erica in cuffs. "What's going on here?" "She's under detention," Cooper barked. "For what?" Anderson asked sharply. He looked at Erica's professional attire, her composed demeanor, the faint gold seal glinting from the corner of her portfolio. His gut told him everything about this was wrong. "Officers, maybe we should verify her ID before—" "Stay out of it," Cooper snapped. "This is police business." But Erica had already angled her portfolio toward Anderson. Even with her wrists bound, she nudged it across the counter. The folder opened just enough for an embossed gold seal to catch the light. "Office of the State Auditor." Anderson's breath caught. Reynolds saw it too, her eyes widening. "Release me," Erica said softly. "Now." The radios on both officers crackled. Dispatch's voice cut through. "Unit 12, be advised, possible misidentification. Confirm subject's ID immediately. Command requests verification. Repeat, verify." Cooper's jaw clenched. Too late. Jasmine's live stream ticked past 10,000 viewers. Comments filled the screen. "Oh my God, she really is the auditor. Somebody get the governor in here." Career's about to end in real time. The balance of power shifted. The department store was no longer just a retail space. It had become a stage. Every shopper, every cashier, every guard had been transformed into an audience. Phones rose above heads like lighters at a concert. The only sound louder than the crackle of radios was the relentless clicking of cameras. Officer Brian Cooper's confidence was unraveling, though he tried to mask it with a hardened glare. Sweat began to pool at his hairline. He knew command had just told him to confirm her identity, yet every instinct screamed at him to hold his ground. To back down in front of a crowd would be humiliation. To admit fault would be worse. Erica Grant, bound in cold steel, was the only calm figure in the storm. She stood straight, her voice controlled, every word sharpened into a weapon. "Officer, release me. You have less than 60 seconds before this escalates beyond your control." The live stream counter jumped again. 12,400 viewers. Jasmine Parker whispered into her mic, "Y'all, she's not even scared. Look at her. She's literally telling them how much time they have left. This is crazy." The chat exploded. "This lady is powerful, you can tell. He's cooked. His career is gone. If she's the state auditor, she audits police budgets. Oh man." Cooper barked at his partner, his voice louder than it needed to be. "Reynolds, keep her steady." But Officer Ashley Reynolds had seen enough. The gold seal, the portfolio, the way Erica carried herself, it all screamed legitimacy. Her hands shook as she looked at the cuffs she had fastened herself. She whispered, almost too softly to hear, "We shouldn't have done this." Cooper snapped his head toward her. "What did you say?" "I said," Reynolds forced the words out louder this time, "we shouldn't have cuffed her." The crowd gasped. Even the cashier blinked in surprise. Erica's calm eyes met Reynolds' trembling ones. "Then fix it," she said gently. The rookie swallowed hard. Her hand moved toward the cuff key on her belt, hesitant, conflicted, but Cooper's glare froze her in place. "Don't you dare," he hissed. At that moment, Rebecca Hayes, the mall's general manager, appeared. Her heels clicked against the tile as she pushed through the crowd. Dressed in a charcoal blazer, phone pressed to her ear, she radiated urgency. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene. A state official in cuffs, two officers sweating under the weight of dozens of recording phones. "What is going on here?" Hayes demanded. "She's being detained for theft," Cooper answered flatly. Hayes's voice rose. "This woman is in a suit. She hasn't left the register, and half the mall is recording this." Erica lifted her chin slightly. "Ms. Hayes, correct? General manager?" Hayes nodded quickly. "Call the governor's office," Erica said. "Now, tell them the state auditor has been unlawfully detained at your mall." The crowd erupted again. Jasmine's voice whispered through her phone, trembling with adrenaline. "Y'all heard that, right? She just said call the governor." Her viewer count ticked past 18,000. Hayes didn't hesitate. She turned away, pressing numbers on her phone as she hurried toward a quieter corner. Cooper's face flushed beet red. "Lady, stop with the theatrics. You're not intimidating anyone." Erica's expression was steady, but her words sliced through the air. "I don't need to intimidate you, Officer Cooper. The law is on my side. The public is watching. And your own command is already questioning you." His radio crackled again, louder this time. "Dispatch. Unit 12. Repeat. Verify identity immediately. Reports confirm subject may be State Auditor Erica Grant. Release is recommended pending confirmation." Every syllable was heard by the crowd. Phones captured the stunned silence that followed. A middle-aged man in a ball cap muttered to his wife, "They cuffed the auditor. These cops are done." The live stream counter passed 25,000. Reynolds couldn't take it anymore. Her voice cracked. "Sir, we need to take the cuffs off. Now." Cooper's jaw worked furiously, chewing on his pride. He gripped the cuffs, knuckles white, but his hands trembled. He had built his entire career on authority, on command, on never being questioned. And now, every eye in the store was burning through him. Erica tilted her head, calm as ever. 30 seconds, officer. That's how long you have before this becomes a state-level crisis." The words dripped with certainty, not threat. And then, like fate sealing the moment, the mall doors swung open at the far end. A man in a tailored suit strode in quickly, flanked by two aides. David Miller, senior liaison from the governor's office. His badge of office glinted as he pushed through the crowd. The murmurs swelled. Cameras turned. Jasmine gasped into her phone. "Oh my God, the governor's guy is here!" Miller's eyes scanned the scene, then locked onto Erica, standing cuffed but regal. His face blanched. He pushed forward, raising his voice. "Release her immediately." Gasps cascaded through the crowd. Cooper froze. "That's a direct order," Miller barked, voice sharp. "Uncuff State Auditor Grant right now." The words hit like a thunderclap. Cooper's pride shattered. His hands fumbled for the key. The cuffs clicked open, metal scraping against Erica's wrists as they fell away. She rubbed the red impressions slowly, deliberately, letting the crowd see. Phones zoomed closer. The live stream counter hit 40,000. Miller turned to Erica, voice low but urgent. "Ms. Grant, on behalf of the governor's office, I apologize deeply. We will handle this immediately." Erica nodded once. "Good. Because what just happened is not a misunderstanding. It is a violation." The crowd erupted in murmurs of agreement. Cooper tried to salvage his dignity. "We had a call. She fit the description." Erica's head turned sharply, eyes narrowing. "You had prejudice. That's all you had. And now you have consequences." The cashier audibly gulped. Reynolds lowered her gaze, shame radiating from her posture. Miller gestured toward the mall's private offices. "Ms. Grant, let's move you somewhere secure until the governor himself can call you. The press is already outside." Erica gathered her portfolio with slow, precise movements. She looked around the store, meeting the eyes of dozens of strangers holding phones. Her voice carried through the silence. "Remember this moment," she said, "because dignity does not disappear under handcuffs, and truth does not need shouting to be heard." The applause started in one corner, hesitant, then spread until the entire store echoed with it. Outside, reporters were already flooding the entrances. News alerts pinged on phones. Breaking: State Auditor Erica Grant, detained at Riverpoint Mall. Governor's office responds. The story was no longer local, it was national. And as Erica walked toward the office suite, Miller at her side, the hum of voices, cameras, and phones followed her like a tide. The storm had only just begun. The glass-walled office suite of Riverpoint Mall had never felt so claustrophobic. Usually reserved for meetings about holiday promotions or lease renewals, it now contained the fallout of a public humiliation spiraling into crisis. Erica Grant sat at the long conference table, posture impeccable. Her leather portfolio rested neatly in front of her. The faint red marks on her wrists stood as silent testimony to what had just occurred. Around her, the hum of voices from the atrium filtered through the glass, hundreds of shoppers still buzzing, dozens still streaming live. Rebecca Hayes, the mall's general manager, paced restlessly, phone glued to her ear. She was juggling calls from corporate headquarters, public relations consultants, and security supervisors. Her face was pale, eyes darting to Erica every few seconds, as if silently pleading for forgiveness she knew she didn't deserve. Officer Brian Cooper slouched in his chair on the far side of the table, his jaw tight, eyes fixed anywhere but Erica's. The swagger he had entered the store with was gone, replaced by a simmering mix of anger and dread. Beside him, Officer Ashley Reynolds hovered near the door, hands clasped, face pale. She hadn't spoken since they entered the office, the weight of her complicity pressing down harder with every minute. David Miller, the governor's liaison, stood near the head of the table. He had already made half a dozen calls in the past 20 minutes, each one more frantic than the last. Now he was silent, waiting, his eyes glued to the door. At exactly 4:02 p.m., the door opened. Chief Clarence Bryant stepped in, his uniform crisp, his posture rigid, the weight of his department carried in every line of his face. At 6'2", with broad shoulders and a reputation for discipline, Bryant had spent decades cultivating an image of control. But as he took in the sight of Erica Grant, the state auditor, handcuff marks still visible, his composure faltered for the briefest second. "Ms. Grant," he said, inclining his head respectfully, "I came as soon as I was informed." Erica's voice was calm, each word clipped with precision. "Chief Bryant, your officers handcuffed me in public, live-streamed to tens of thousands without evidence, without cause, and without even asking for identification. What do you intend to do about it?" The silence in the room was suffocating. Cooper shifted, trying to mask his unease with indignation. "Chief, she matched the description we were given. Dark jacket, black bag." Bryant cut him off sharply. "Be quiet, Officer Cooper. It wasn't just an order, it was a verdict." Cooper's face flushed, but he obeyed. Bryant turned his full attention to Erica. "On behalf of the Riverpoint Police Department, I apologize sincerely. This should not have happened, and it will be addressed immediately." Erica's gaze never wavered. "Apologies are noted. Accountability is required." Bryant nodded once. Then, turning to Cooper, his voice thundered. "Effective immediately, Officer Cooper. You are suspended pending investigation, badge and firearm. Now." Gasps rippled through the room. Even Hayes stopped pacing. Reynolds' mouth fell open. Cooper shot up from his chair. "Chief, you can't be serious. This is an overreaction." "Now!" Bryant barked. With shaking hands, Cooper unpinned his badge and placed it on the table. He removed his sidearm slowly, the weight of it heavy in both senses of the word, and set it down beside the badge. His career, once defined by authority, was crumbling in front of the very woman he had tried to humiliate. Erica leaned forward slightly, her voice quiet but razor-sharp. "Do you understand what you've done, Officer Cooper? You didn't just disrespect me as a person. You disrespected the office I hold, the office that reviews your department's budget investigates misconduct, and determines whether taxpayer dollars are being used appropriately. You put your pride above procedure, and in doing so, you endangered your entire department. Cooper's eyes darted between her and the chief. His lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. For once, silence was his only refuge. Bryant turned to Reynolds. His voice softened slightly. "Officer Reynolds, you will also be reviewed, but your hesitation, your honesty, may weigh in your favor. Do you have anything to say right now?" Reynolds' throat worked. "Chief, I knew it didn't feel right. I saw the seal. I should have stopped it." She looked at Erica, eyes wet. "I'm sorry." Erica regarded her carefully. "Hesitation is not enough, Officer Reynolds. Courage is what prevents harm. Remember that." The words landed with the weight of a lesson, not just a rebuke. Reynolds nodded, shame written in every line of her face. Miller finally spoke, his tone sharp with urgency. "Chief, this is already a statewide crisis. Media is outside. National networks are covering it. The governor expects a press conference by evening. We cannot minimize this, and we cannot call it a misunderstanding. It must be addressed as what it is, discrimination." Bryant exhaled heavily, shoulders sagging for a moment under the weight of it all. "You're right," he said. "We'll prepare the statement. We'll take responsibility." Erica folded her hands atop her portfolio, calm as ever. "I'll be at that press conference, and I will not allow the word misunderstanding to appear anywhere in your statement." Hayes spoke up nervously. "Ms. Grant, the mall corporate is demanding answers as well. They're terrified of the fallout." Erica turned her eyes on her. "Then they should learn what accountability looks like." Hayes swallowed hard and nodded. The door opened again and a mall security officer poked his head in. "There's a crowd outside, ma'am. Reporters, protesters too. Word spreading fast." Miller muttered under his breath, "Of course it is." Erica rose slowly, her posture regal, commanding attention. She looked at Cooper one last time, her tone quiet but devastating. "You thought you were cuffing a shoplifter. What you actually did was handcuff accountability to your own career, and careers don't recover from that." Cooper's head dropped. Bryant gestured toward the door. "Ms. Grant will escort you safely to the press conference staging area." She lifted her portfolio, the embossed gold seal gleaming under the fluorescent light. With measured steps, she walked toward the door, every camera phone outside waiting to capture her next move. And as the door closed behind them, Brian Cooper sat slumped in his chair, staring at the empty space she left behind. The silence screamed louder than any reprimand. By 4:30 p.m., social media was ablaze. Clips of Erica declaring her office title, clips of Cooper fumbling with cuffs, clips of Miller demanding release, all flooded timelines across the country. State Auditor in cuffs trended at #1 nationwide. Shopping While Black surged to #2. Her accountability now hovered at 3. News anchors scrambled to book panels. Commentators dissected every frame. Civil rights leaders praised Erica's composure. Legal analysts warned of lawsuits. Police unions scrambled to contain the damage. And in the governor's mansion, preparations began for a primetime address that would put Erica Grant front and center before the nation. The mall's atrium no longer felt like a place for shopping. It had transformed into a holding pen for chaos. News vans were stacked in rows outside, their satellite dishes pointed skyward. Reporters elbowed each other for position near the barricades hastily set up by mall security. Shoppers who had stumbled onto history hours earlier now lingered on the mezzanine, recording the aftermath on their phones as though it were theater. Inside a private back office, Erica Grant sat with her portfolio open, reading through a draft statement prepared by the police department. She scanned each line quickly, her expression sharpening with every word. At the bottom, she stopped, exhaled once, then pushed the paper across the table. "This will not do," she said. Her tone was calm, but the steel in it silenced the room. Chief Clarence Bryant shifted in his chair, uncomfortably. David Miller, the governor's liaison, looked as though he'd been running damage control for 10 years straight without rest. Rebecca Hayes, the mall manager, clutched her phone like a lifeline. Erica tapped the draft with one manicured finger. It says, "We regret the misunderstanding." This was not a misunderstanding. Say what it was. Miller leaned forward carefully. Ms. Grant, we understand, but you know how these things work. The unions, she cut him off. The unions don't write my narrative, and the people watching won't accept that phrasing. If you want to minimize this, do it without me. But know that I will step to the microphone tonight and call it exactly what it was. Discrimination. Bryant pinched the bridge of his nose. He had seen many crises in his decades of service, but this one was different. It wasn't just a press issue. It was personal. The woman seated across from him wasn't just a victim. She was a constitutional officer, and she wasn't going to let them escape responsibility. Hayes, her corporate instincts firing, interjected, "Ms. Grant, corporate is terrified. They're asking if you might soften your words slightly. They're worried about liability." Erica's eyes flicked to her. "Your liability is reality, Ms. Hayes. Words won't change that." Silence followed. At 6:14 p.m., Miller's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, then straightened. "The governor's motorcade is 10 minutes out. They'll arrive through the south entrance. National networks are ready to cut live at 7:00 sharp." The room stiffened. Erica closed her portfolio and rose. She smoothed the front of her blazer with deliberate calm. "Then let's prepare." In the staging area behind the atrium, aides buzzed like bees. Microphones were tested, podiums polished, banners hung with the state seal centered perfectly behind the stage. Cameramen adjusted tripods. Producers shouted into headsets. Erica stood at the edge of it all, composed in stillness while the chaos orbited around her. She wasn't new to public appearances, budget hearings, legislative testimonies, even late-night sessions with committee chairs. But this was different. This wasn't about numbers or policy. This was about dignity, and the entire country was watching. Miller pulled her aside. His voice was urgent but careful. "Ms. Grant, the governor will open with a statement. He'll condemn what happened, commit to reforms, then hand the podium to you. You'll have 5 minutes. Use them well." Erica tilted her head slightly. "I won't need 5 minutes. Truth doesn't require that long." Miller gave a weary half-smile. "Just make sure to leave them with no doubt." At 6:28 p.m., the governor entered, his tailored suit pressed, his face carrying the weight of responsibility. Flanked by state troopers, he moved quickly through the hall, shaking Erica's hand firmly. "Ms. Grant, I cannot apologize enough. Tonight, we make this right." Her reply was measured. "Words will matter, Governor, but action will matter more." He nodded gravely. Together they walked toward the curtain leading to the stage. Beyond it, the murmur of reporters swelled like an approaching tide. Lights blazed against the backdrop, cameras already trained on the podium. At exactly 7 p.m., the governor stepped to the podium. "Good evening," he began, voice steady but grave. "Today, in one of our busiest shopping centers, an elected official, our state auditor, Erica Grant, was wrongfully detained by law enforcement. This was unacceptable. It was wrong, and it cannot be excused." Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. The live stream counters ticked upward. 80,000, 120,000, 200,000. "Our citizens deserve equal treatment under the law," the governor continued. "What happened today violated that principle. I have ordered a full investigation into this incident and immediate review of all department procedures. But tonight, you don't need to hear from me. You need to hear from her. Ladies and gentlemen, State Auditor Erica Grant." He stepped back. The room erupted in flashes as Erica walked forward. She adjusted the microphone slightly, then looked out over the sea of cameras and reporters. Her presence alone hushed the noise. "My name is Erica Grant," she began. Her voice was calm, each word deliberate. "I am your state auditor. Today, while purchasing a pair of shoes, I was accused of theft, handcuffed in public, and humiliated before strangers. My only crime was existing in that store as a black woman." The silence was electric. Reporters scribbled furiously. Viewers at home leaned closer to their screens. "I want to be clear," she continued. "This is not about me alone. This is about every person who has been profiled, dismissed, or degraded because of bias. This is about every community forced to live under suspicion, and this is about the systems that allow it to continue. She lifted her wrists slightly, showing the faint red marks. These impressions will fade, but the mark left on public trust, unless corrected, will remain. That is why I will use my office to audit every law enforcement budget in this state. If taxpayer dollars are funding discrimination, the people deserve to know. Gasps filled the room. Applause broke out, rare in such a setting, but it spread quickly until it thundered. This is not vengeance, Erica pressed on. This is reform, this is justice, and this is dignity reclaimed, not just for me, but for every citizen who has been underestimated. When she stepped back, the applause was deafening. The live stream counter ticked past 500,000. Hashtags exploded. #Auditor speaks. #Justice for Erica. #Accountability now. As she exited the stage, reporters shouted questions. Ms. Grant, will you press charges? Do you demand Officer Cooper's termination? Do you think this represents a larger pattern? She paused just long enough to look directly at the cameras. This is not about one officer. This is about systemic change, and that is where my focus lies. Then she walked past, the cameras following every step. By 9 p.m., her speech dominated every news cycle. CNN aired it in full. MSNBC analysts praised her poise. Even skeptical outlets conceded her words were powerful. Late-night hosts opened their monologues with clips of Cooper's smirk evaporating as Erica named her office. In homes across the state, parents replayed the video for their children, pointing out the moment calm authority dismantled arrogance. Civil rights groups issued statements of support. Community organizations rallied around her. And in living rooms across town, officers watched nervously, knowing an audit was coming. For Erica Grant, the press conference wasn't the end, it was the spark. The storm had only just moved from local to national. By sunrise the next morning, the state had changed. Every television carried the same footage on repeat. Erica Grant, standing at the podium, her wrists still bearing the faint marks of handcuffs, declaring calmly to the world that she had been profiled. Clips were shared millions of times overnight. On Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, hashtags like #Justice for Erica, #Auditor Speaks, and #Shopping While Black trended at the top. Commentators described her tone as surgical, measured, and impossible to ignore. Civil rights leaders praised her courage. Editorial boards demanded immediate reform. And ordinary citizens, from barbershops to church halls, debated the symbolism of a powerful state official reduced to just another suspect in the eyes of prejudice. Meanwhile, inside the River Point Police Department, the atmosphere was closer to panic than professionalism. In a windowless meeting room, representatives of the police union gathered in tense whispers. Coffee sat untouched. Papers littered the table. Drafted statements, notes from lawyers, clips from the viral livestream. Union President Frank Delaney slammed his fist onto the table. We need to get ahead of this before every officer in the state is painted with the same brush. A younger board member muttered, "It's too late. Did you see that speech? She's not just some victim. She's the auditor. She controls the purse strings." Delaney scowled. "We'll push the narrative that this was a mistake. Training issue, not discrimination." Another voice cut in. "That won't fly." She said the word herself, discrimination, and the governor backed her. If we fight her, we look like we're defending profiling. Silence fell. They all knew it was true. For the first time in years, the union realized their usual tactics, defensiveness, denial, deflection, might not work. Erica Grant wasn't just another name in a complaint file. She was a constitutional officer, and the entire state was now listening to her. At his suburban home, Officer Brian Cooper sat slumped in a recliner, blinds drawn tight. His phone vibrated nonstop, reporters calling, old colleagues texting, strangers flooding him with insults. Disgrace. You cuffed the auditor? You're finished. His teenage son had been sent home from school after classmates played the viral clip on loop in the cafeteria. His wife barely spoke to him, her shame louder than any words. Cooper poured himself another drink and replayed the footage on his own phone. Over and over, he watched the moment Erica's voice cut through his smirk. I am the State Auditor. It wasn't just a title, it was a guillotine. Every replay reminded him that his 15-year career had been undone in less than 5 minutes. Officer Ashley Reynolds, meanwhile, sat in her tiny apartment staring at the ceiling. She had barely slept. Her mind replayed the moment she hesitated, the second she saw the gold seal in Erica's portfolio and knew this wasn't right. And yet she'd followed orders. Her phone buzzed with messages too, though hers were different. Some strangers praised her hesitation. Others condemned her silence. Her own family texted, "Why didn't you stop it? You knew better." Tears blurred her vision. She wanted to believe she wasn't like Cooper, but she couldn't escape the truth. She had cuffed the state auditor too. At corporate headquarters in another state, executives for Millstone department stores convened an emergency video call. Their faces looked pale under fluorescent office lights. One executive rubbed his temples. "Our brand is on fire. People are boycotting already. Hashtags are calling us complicit." Another snapped, "We weren't the ones who cuffed her, the cops did." "Doesn't matter," a third interjected. "It happened in our store, on our watch, with our security guards standing by." Silence fell. They all knew the optics were damning. The CEO spoke last. "We issue a full apology. We donate to civil rights groups. And we beg Ms. Grant for a meeting. If she doesn't forgive us publicly, our sales collapse by Christmas." While others scrambled, Erica Grant was at work by 8 a.m. Her office buzzed with activity. Stacks of files spread across desks. Assistants answered phones non-stop. Community leaders called to offer support. Legislators requested meetings. Erica stood in the center of it all, issuing calm instructions. "Pull every line item on police department budgets statewide. I want to know how much is spent on training, how much on community outreach, and how many complaints have been buried. Start in River Point, then expand." Her deputy auditor frowned. "That's going to rattle cages." Erica didn't blink. "Good, they need rattling." By midday, rallies had formed outside River Point Mall. Dozens of citizens carried signs. "Dignity is not a crime. Hands off our auditor," and "Shopping while black is not probable cause." Local pastors linked arms with students, chanting Erica's name. College groups organized marches. Civil rights attorneys offered free services to anyone profiled. The atmosphere felt less like a protest and more like the birth of a movement. Inside the crowd, Jasmine Parker, the college student whose live stream had first captured the cuffs, was recognized instantly. People asked for selfies with her. Commenters flooded her feed with gratitude. "You exposed the truth," they wrote. Jasmine, still overwhelmed, only shook her head. "All I did was hit go live." She did the rest. In the Capitol, the governor sat with senior advisors in the war room. Poll numbers flashed across screens. Erica's approval rating had skyrocketed overnight. The governor's own numbers rose too, thanks to his decision to back her. But his advisors were split. Some warned that police unions would revolt if reforms went too far. Others argued that the public's demand for accountability was too strong to ignore. David Miller, weary but sharp, leaned across the table. "Governor, the people trust her. If you stand beside her reforms, you'll be remembered as the leader who fixed this. If you oppose her, you'll look like the man who tried to shield corruption." The governor exhaled. "Draft the legislation. We'll ride this wave." By evening, Erica's face filled national screens. CNN hosted a panel praising her speech. MSNBC interviewed community activists calling her the calm in the storm. Even Fox ran the footage, though with commentary about government overreach. Late-night hosts cracked jokes at Cooper's expense. "Imagine cuffing the very person who audits your budget," one quipped. "That's like stealing from your accountant and then asking for a loan." But beneath the humor was the truth. Erica Grant had become a national figure overnight. Back in her quiet apartment, Erica finally closed her laptop at midnight. The day had been relentless. Calls, meetings, interviews. Yet she hadn't let fatigue show. Now, alone, she allowed herself a moment of silence. She poured a glass of water, sat at her kitchen table, and stared at the faint red marks still visible on her wrists. They would fade soon, but the message they carried would not. She whispered into the stillness, almost to herself. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. And she meant it. The following week, Riverpoint Mall looked almost normal again. Families shopped, teenagers loitered, security guards strolled in pairs. But in truth, nothing was normal. The confrontation had left an invisible scar. Shoppers still pointed to the shoe counter where Erica Grant had been cuffed. Employees whispered about the day their workplace became national news. Meanwhile, in the Capitol, Erica had already shifted from symbol to strategist. At a press briefing held in her office, Erica stood behind a podium embossed with the state seal. Reporters filled every seat, cameras trained on her. As State Auditor, she began, I am announcing a comprehensive review of every law enforcement agency in this state. We will examine budgets, training programs, and complaint handling procedures. Our goal is simple. Taxpayer dollars must not fund discrimination. Flashes popped like fireworks. She continued, This audit will not be cosmetic. It will be thorough. Every invoice, every training contract, every complaint record will be examined, and the results will be made public. The room buzzed with questions, but Erica remained composed. She knew the announcement would rattle cages, and that was precisely the point. Inside police headquarters, Chief Clarence Bryant faced his command staff. On the screen, Erica's press briefing played live. Each sentence felt like a hammer striking an anvil. One captain muttered, She's going to tear us apart. Bryant's jaw tightened. Then make sure your records are clean, because if she finds anything buried, she will expose it. But he knew not every record was clean. Years of complaints had been quietly filed away. Biased training contracts had been signed and forgotten. And now, all of it was about to be pulled into daylight. The police union wasted no time striking back. At a press conference of their own, Frank Delaney, the union president, stood before reporters. This so-called audit is nothing more than political theater, he declared. Our officers put their lives on the line every day, and now they're being vilified because of one incident. This witch hunt will demoralize law enforcement statewide, reporters pressed him. But what about the auditor's experience? Delaney's face hardened. No one should be above scrutiny, not even the auditor. She's exploiting her position for personal gain. Clips of his statement circulated quickly, but the public wasn't buying it. Social media erupted with rebuttals. Personal gain? She literally got humiliated in public. If they're this scared of an audit, they must have something to hide. The hashtag number #WhatAreTheyHiding started trending by evening. By week 2, Erica's audit team had already uncovered troubling findings. In one precinct, funds earmarked for community policing outreach had been diverted to buy tactical gear rarely used outside demonstrations. In another, bias training materials were outdated by nearly a decade. And in Riverpoint itself, dozens of citizen complaints about profiling had been filed, stamped, reviewed, and quietly shelved. Erica held up a file during a staff meeting. This is what systemic looks like, she said. Buried paperwork, dismissed complaints, taxpayer money spent on appearances instead of accountability. We won't bury this. We'll expose it. Her staff nodded, galvanized. They knew they weren't just crunching numbers. They were rewriting history. News outlets devoured the findings. Headlines screamed, Auditor's team uncovers misuse of funds in police training. Buried complaints surface under state audit. Is discrimination being subsidized by taxpayers? Talk shows booked experts. Civil rights leaders praised Erica's determination. Conservative pundits accused her of declaring war on police. Through it all, Erica remained measured. Every time she spoke, she used facts, not emotion. Every time she appeared on screen, she carried herself with the same composure she had shown in the department store. Meanwhile, Brian Cooper's life unraveled further. His suspension had turned into formal termination. News vans parked outside his house. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Former colleagues ignored his calls. He tried to defend himself online, posting, "I followed procedure." But the replies were brutal. "Procedure isn't prejudice, buddy. You cuffed the auditor, you're done." Even his own family grew distant. His wife spent nights at her sister's. His son stopped speaking to him altogether. For Cooper, the viral clip wasn't just the end of a career, it was the end of his reputation. In contrast, Officer Ashley Reynolds began attending community forums voluntarily. At one event, a student asked her, "Why didn't you speak up?" Her voice shook as she answered, "Because I was afraid of my partner, and that fear made me complicit. I can't take back what I did, but I can promise to do better, and I will." Her honesty earned cautious respect. Some forgave her. Others remained skeptical, but she kept showing up, determined to turn hesitation into courage. At Millstone Department Store's headquarters, executives followed every twist nervously. Their brand image had taken a beating. Sales dipped by double digits. Boycotts spread. The CEO made a decision. "We're requesting a direct meeting with Auditor Grant. We'll commit funds to bias training across all stores. We need her endorsement or we'll never recover." Letters went out that afternoon requesting her presence. Erica's office replied politely but firmly, "We will consider your request after the audit findings are released. Until then, accountability must come first." Corporate executives groaned. They knew they were at her mercy. By the third week, marches had grown larger. Citizens carried signs quoting Erica's words, "Dignity does not disappear under handcuffs." Churches played her speech during Sunday services. Schools held discussions about bias and accountability. What had begun as humiliation inside one department store had transformed into a statewide movement. And at the center of it all was Erica Grant, calm, resolute, unwilling to bend. Inside the Capitol, the governor prepared to unveil a legislative package: mandatory bias training, independent complaint review boards, and stricter budget accountability. His advisors worried about pushback from unions. David Miller, still at his side, reassured him. "The people are with her. They'll be with you if you stand beside her. History doesn't remember those who stayed quiet. It remembers those who chose a side." The governor nodded. "Then we choose hers." Late one night, after a day of relentless meetings, Erica sat in her office alone. The city skyline glittered beyond her window. She looked down at her wrists, still faintly marked from the cuffs, though nearly faded now. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "These will disappear, but the memory won't, and I won't let them forget." Then she turned back to her desk, reviewing yet another stack of files, each one a piece of the puzzle she was determined to solve. The first month after the mall incident turned the state upside down. What had begun as a humiliating arrest in a shoe aisle had snowballed into the largest police audit in state history. Erica Grant's office worked around the clock. Files piled up in towers on desks, auditors combed through receipts, and assistants fielded endless calls. The office no longer felt like a government workplace, it felt like a newsroom mid-crisis. Every day, another revelation threatened to erupt. One evening, Erica's deputy auditor, Marcus Ellis, placed a thick folder on her desk. His face was pale. "You need to see this." Inside were internal emails from River Point PD, buried under years of records. One stood out, a supervisor instructing officers to increase stops in certain neighborhoods because statistics show higher risk there. The neighborhoods named were overwhelmingly Black and Latino. "This is a smoking gun," Marcus whispered. Erica read it twice, then closed the folder with deliberate calm. "We release it tomorrow. No delays. The people deserve to know." The next morning, Erica stood before reporters once again. She held the folder in her hands as cameras flashed. Our audit has revealed documented evidence of systemic bias in River Point Police Department, she said. Supervisors explicitly instructed officers to target specific communities based on race. This is not perception. This is not rumor. This is fact, written in their own words. Gasps filled the room. Reporters shouted questions. Will you refer this for federal investigation? Does this prove profiling is state-sanctioned? What does this mean for other precincts? Erica answered calmly, we will expand our audit statewide, and if we uncover similar practices elsewhere, we will not hesitate to refer findings to the Department of Justice. That night, national news led with her words. Auditor exposes systemic bias in police records. In the Capitol, the revelations rattled legislators. Supporters praised Erica's courage. Opponents fumed, accusing her of overreach. Senator James Whitaker, a longtime ally of police unions, went on record. This auditor is turning a tragic misunderstanding into a crusade. She's weaponizing her office for political gain. But his words rang hollow in the face of the leaked emails. Social media shredded him. Political gain? She literally showed receipts. If this is what's hidden in River Point, imagine the rest. The hashtag "Dogs Show the Receipts" trended by midnight. Meanwhile, Brian Cooper sat in his darkened living room, the TV glow illuminating his hollow eyes. He watched Erica's press conference, replaying her words. Each sentence felt like a nail in his coffin. He muttered bitterly to himself, she's destroying us. But deep down, he knew she hadn't destroyed anything. He had. His arrogance, his prejudice, his refusal to listen. Those had written his downfall long before Erica's calm voice finished the job. He scrolled through online forums, some defending him, most condemning him. He fixated on the few that called Erica power-hungry or grandstanding. They were rare, but they fed his wounded pride like scraps to a starving man. Officer Ashley Reynolds, still on probationary review, requested a meeting with Erica. When granted, she sat nervously across from her in the auditor's office. Ms. Grant, Reynolds began, her voice shaky. I know I failed that day. I didn't stop my partner. I cuffed you myself. I can't change that. But I want to help. I'll testify. I'll speak to your auditors. I'll tell them everything I saw inside the department. Erica studied her carefully. Why now? Reynolds swallowed hard. Because silence isn't neutral. I've learned that. If I stay quiet, I'm complicit all over again. Erica's eyes softened slightly, though her tone remained measured. Then speak. Not for me. For the truth. Churches held vigils in Erica's honor. High schools assigned essays about her speech. College groups organized statewide marches demanding reform. At one rally, students carried signs quoting her directly, "Dignity does not disappear under handcuffs." The chant echoed across city streets, blending with car horns and drum beats. Who audits the auditors? She does. Who checks the books? She does. Who tells the truth? She does. The movement had outgrown her, but she remained its face. Governor's Mansion, evening. The governor sat with David Miller and senior staff. On the table lay draft legislation. Mandatory annual bias training, independent civilian review boards for complaints, full transparency of police spending audits. This is bold, one advisor warned. The unions will come after you hard. The governor sighed. They already are. But the public's with her, and if I don't act, I look like I'm covering for them. Miller leaned in. History is watching. Don't just react, lead. The governor nodded. Then we push it through. Late that night, Erica sat at her kitchen table, tea steaming beside her. She reviewed another thick stack of documents, more evidence of buried complaints, more misuse of funds. Her phone buzzed with messages of support, invitations to speak, even whispers of a potential future run for higher office. She ignored them all. Her eyes drifted to her wrists. The marks had almost vanished now. Only faint lines remained, barely visible under soft lamplight. She whispered into the quiet, "The cuffs may be gone, but the truth remains." And she returned to work page by page, determined to turn exposure into reform. The ripple effect of that afternoon at River Point Mall stretched far beyond press conferences and legislative hearings. For the individuals closest to the confrontation, life had permanently changed. Brian Cooper's house once carried the confidence of a man who thought himself untouchable. Framed commendations on the walls, photos from years of service, his badge once displayed proudly in a glass case. Now, those walls felt suffocating. The commendations looked hollow, the photos mocked him, and the badge was gone. His termination letter arrived by courier 2 weeks after the incident. The language was bureaucratic, cold. Officer Brian Cooper is hereby dismissed from the River Point Police Department due to conduct unbecoming of an officer and violation of departmental policy. He read it once, twice, then dropped it onto the table like it burned his hands. Neighbors avoided eye contact when he stepped outside. Reporters parked on his street, waiting for a soundbite. Even when he tried to go to the grocery store, whispers followed him. That's the guy who cuffed her. Inside his home, silence grew heavier by the day. His wife had moved out temporarily, staying with her sister. His teenage son refused to answer his calls. Cooper scrolled through news articles late into the night, each one another reminder that his name was now synonymous with humiliation. He muttered to himself bitterly, "One mistake, just one mistake." But even he knew it hadn't been one mistake. It had been years of arrogance condensed into one viral moment. While Cooper crumbled, Ashley Reynolds chose a different path. Placed on probationary duty, she could have stayed quiet, kept her head down, and hoped the storm passed. Instead, she attended community meetings, sometimes in uniform, sometimes in plain clothes. At one forum, a high school student stood and asked bluntly, "Why didn't you stop him?" Reynolds didn't dodge. Her voice trembled, but she answered, "Because I was scared. Scared of defying my partner. Scared of the fallout. But fear isn't an excuse. It's complicity. I failed that day. I won't again." The room was silent for a long moment. Then an older woman in the front row nodded slowly. "Owning your failure is the first step to fixing it." Reynolds left the forum shaken but determined. Each time she spoke publicly, the words cut her, but they also healed her. She reached out to Erica privately, volunteering to testify about internal pressures inside the department. Erica received her with measured calm. "Words matter," she told her, "but action will prove them." Reynolds nodded. She knew this was her chance to rebuild brick by brick. For Rebecca Hayes, the mall manager, fallout came with a different flavor. Her corporate supervisors grilled her in video calls, demanding answers. Why hadn't security intervened? Why hadn't she de-escalated faster? Why did their store become the stage for a national scandal? Hayes defended herself. "I called the governor's office. I moved as quickly as I could. Executives weren't satisfied. Do you realize what this has cost us? Sales are down, boycotts are spreading, our brand is toxic right now." But privately, community members gave her cautious credit. Without her call, the governor's office might not have responded as swiftly. Without her intervention, Erica might have been dragged out of the store in cuffs. Still, Hayes carried the weight of guilt. Every time she walked through the mall, she saw the spot where Erica had stood, hands bound. And she remembered the cameras, the whispers, the fear. She kept working, but the confidence she once carried into every corporate meeting had vanished. Chief Bryant faced perhaps the most delicate balance of all. On one side, his officers demanded loyalty, insisting he defend them from what they saw as an overreaction. On the other side, the governor, legislators, and the public demanded accountability. At a press briefing, Bryant stood before reporters. "We failed that day," he admitted. "Our department must do better. I support the auditor's review and will fully cooperate." The union seethed. Officers muttered in locker rooms. Anonymous comments online called him a traitor. But Bryant knew the truth. Standing against Erica now was career suicide. Standing with her was survival and perhaps redemption. Privately, he carried guilt. He had seen officers like Cooper before, had heard complaints about their arrogance, but he hadn't acted forcefully enough. Now his inaction had been exposed for the world to see. For Erica, the personal consequences were paradoxical. She had gone from humiliation to hero, from victim to leader. Crowds chanted her name. Editorials called her the calm that cracked the system. Invitations poured in, conferences, panels, even whispers of a future gubernatorial run. But she wasn't interested in glory. In quiet moments, she still felt the cold bite of the cuffs. She still heard Cooper's mocking voice. "Lady, you're a shoplifter." She told her staff one evening, "I don't want this to be about me. I want it to be about change. If I become the story, we've missed the point." Her staff nodded, but they knew the truth. She was the story. By month 2, marches had spread beyond River Point. Cities across the state held rallies. Protesters carried signs with Erica's quotes. Youth groups organized teach-ins. Churches wove her words into sermons. It echoed across campuses, city streets, even at sporting events. The movement had grown larger than one woman, but Erica remained its anchor. In the Capitol, legislators once cautious about reform began changing their tune. Constituents flooded their offices with calls and emails demanding accountability. Even hardened skeptics admitted off the record that Erica had shifted the landscape. One lawmaker muttered to a colleague, "She's bulletproof now. Opposing her is like opposing gravity." The governor seized the moment. He stood beside Erica at a press conference, unveiling a sweeping reform package. "This is not about politics," he declared. "This is about justice." The crowd erupted in applause. Late at night, after another marathon day, Erica sat in her living room. The faint cuff marks were gone now, but she traced her wrists absent-mindedly. She whispered to herself, "The marks may fade, but the memory stays." Her phone buzzed, a text from a mother she had never met. "Thank you. My son was stopped last year for no reason. No one believed us. Now they do." Erica smiled faintly. That, she thought, was the reason she endured. From their corners, the others followed her rise. Cooper, bitter, muttered at his TV, drowning his shame in alcohol. Reynolds, humbled, scribbled notes in a journal titled Lessons Learned. Hayes, weary, braced for another corporate grilling. Bryant, calculating, wondered if he could survive the union's fury. Each life had been reshaped by that moment in the shoe aisle. And Erica, once handcuffed, now carried them all, willingly or not, into a future that demanded accountability. Spring sunlight streamed across the marble steps of the state capitol. A year had passed since the incident at River Point Mall, but its echo still reverberated across every corner of the state. Crowds gathered outside the building holding signs not of protest this time, but of support. "Accountability works. We stand with the auditor," and "1 year strong." Inside, Erica Grant prepared to present the Year 1 report of her sweeping audit. She stood before a mirror, adjusting her blazer. The faint scars of the past year weren't physical anymore. They were political, social, cultural. The cuff marks on her wrists had long faded, but the weight of what they had sparked still rested on her shoulders. At 10 a.m., Erica stepped to the podium in the Capitol Rotunda. Legislators, reporters, activists, and citizens filled the hall. Cameras whirred, lights blazed, anticipation thickened. She began calm and deliberate as always. "1 year ago, I stood in a department store in cuffs, accused of theft without cause. That moment was painful, but it was also a mirror showing us what too many already knew. Bias lives in the shadows of our institutions. Today, we face what the audit has revealed." She opened the thick binder in front of her, its pages tabbed and highlighted. Complaints of profiling had been buried, training dollars were misallocated, community outreach funds went unused. In too many cases, taxpayers paid for programs that never reached the communities most in need. The numbers were stark. 42% decrease in profiling complaints since reforms began. 100% compliance with new bias training programs. Millions reallocated toward community policing initiatives. Civilian review boards established in every precinct statewide. Erica's voice grew stronger as she continued. "This is not the end of bias. It is not the end of discrimination, but it is proof that accountability works. Proof that reform is possible. Proof that dignity, once denied, can be restored." Applause filled the rotunda, echoing off the marble walls. Outside, the applause was met with cheers. Church groups, student organizations, and civic leaders celebrated the progress. Signs read, "She kept her promise," and "From cuffs to change." At one rally, Jasmine Parker, the college student whose live stream had first broadcast the incident, spoke to a crowd. She held up her phone, still the same device she'd used that day. "I just pressed go live. She did the rest. And look what happened. One live stream changed a state. Don't ever think your voice doesn't matter." The crowd roared in approval. At a press conference later that afternoon, the governor stood beside Erica. His words were uncharacteristically emotional. She turned humiliation into hope. She turned a wrongful arrest into reform. And she has set a standard for accountability that will outlast all of us. He paused, then added, "We should all be grateful that on that day, in that mall, the woman in cuffs was Erica Grant, because she had the strength to turn it into change." Not everyone was celebrating. Brian Cooper sat in a dingy apartment, his once proud life now reduced to half-empty bottles and stacks of unpaid bills. His marriage was over. His son had cut ties completely. On the TV, Erica's speech played live. He glared at the screen, muttering, "All because of one day." But deep down, he knew it wasn't one day. It was years of unchecked arrogance that had finally collapsed on him in the worst possible way. The world had moved on. He hadn't. Ashley Reynolds, in contrast, had taken Erica's words to heart. Over the past year, she had become one of the loudest advocates for reform within the department. She volunteered to train recruits on ethics, testifying openly about her failure that day. In a cadet class, she spoke candidly. "Fear kept me silent." But silence isn't neutral. It's complicity. Learn from my mistake. Because the cost of hesitation is someone else's dignity. Cadets listened, their notebooks filling with her words. Some later said her honesty left a greater impression than any official curriculum. Rebecca Hayes, once the panicked mall manager, had also changed course. Corporate reassigned her to a new division focused on equity and diversity initiatives across all Millstone department stores. It was both a punishment and an opportunity. She embraced it. She pushed for better training, stronger policies, and community partnerships. In quiet moments, she still replayed the day in her mind, but she used that memory as fuel to ensure it never happened again in her stores. Chief Clarence Bryant managed to keep his job, though not without scars. He had been forced to navigate between angry unions and reform-hungry citizens. But his decision to suspend Cooper immediately and cooperate with Erica's audit had ultimately preserved his position. At a press briefing on the anniversary, he admitted, "We were exposed, and though it was painful, it made us better." That's the truth. It was the closest he'd come to thanking Erica publicly. By evening, Erica returned to her apartment, exhausted but content. She poured herself tea and sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages, praise, invitations, requests for interviews. She ignored most of them. Instead, she opened a handwritten letter delivered earlier that day. "Dear Miss Grant, I'm just a mother from River Point. A year ago, my teenage son was stopped and searched without cause. He came home ashamed and silent. When we saw you speak, he looked at me and said, 'She knows what it feels like. Thank you for making him believe in justice again. Sincerely, Marcia Lewis.'" Erica folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer, where she kept only the most meaningful mementos. She whispered softly into the quiet, "This is why." National networks framed the one-year anniversary as a turning point. Commentators debated whether the Grant model of audits should spread to other states. Editorials praised her ability to transform personal injustice into institutional change. One op-ed captured the sentiment best. What happened in a shoe aisle should have been just another indignity forgotten by the next day's news cycle. Instead, it became a revolution because Erica Grant refused to let the cuffs define her. Some whispered about national office. When asked directly in an interview, she smiled faintly and answered, "Right now, my focus is on the job the people elected me to do. The rest will come when it comes." It wasn't a no, and that made headlines too. As night fell on the anniversary, Erica walked past the Capitol steps where a candlelight vigil had gathered. People held signs with her quotes, candles glowing softly against the marble. She didn't step to the podium. She didn't speak. She just walked quietly among them, unnoticed by many, until one child tugged at her sleeve and whispered, "Are you the lady from the video?" Erica bent down, smiling gently. "Yes, I am." The child grinned. "You're really brave." Erica touched the child's shoulder softly. "Bravery is just doing the right thing, even when it's hard. Remember that." Then she slipped away, letting the vigil continue without her, content to watch from the shadows. The story of Erica Grant no longer belonged to River Point Mall. It no longer even belonged to the state. A year after her wrongful arrest, her name had become shorthand for accountability, dignity, and reform across the country. In Washington, congressional committees cited Erica's audit model as inspiration for federal proposals. Civil rights groups invited her to keynote national conferences. Universities offered honorary degrees. Editorial boards debated whether her Grant standard should be adopted nationwide. She accepted some invitations, declined others, but remained consistent. "This is not about building my career. This is about building systems that serve people fairly." Her humility only magnified her stature. For Brian Cooper, the world had moved on without him. His name no longer trended, but the stain never faded. Job applications were rejected once background checks revealed his history. Even security firms refused to hire him. He moved to a smaller town 2 counties over, living alone in a cramped rental. The walls were bare, the silence heavy. When neighbors learned his story, whispers began again. He often replayed the clip on his old phone. The moment Erica declared, "I am the state auditor." Each viewing reminded him not just of his downfall, but of his arrogance. The world had forgotten him, but he could not forget himself. Ashley Reynolds rebuilt her career piece by piece. After testifying to auditors and admitting her failures publicly, she became a training officer for new recruits. She incorporated her story into every lesson. One day, a cadet asked, "Why do you tell us this every week?" Reynolds replied, "Steady now. Because silence is as dangerous as prejudice. If you ever hesitate when you know something's wrong, remember me. Don't be me. Be better." Her honesty turned her into an unlikely reformer within the force. While Cooper faded into obscurity, Reynolds carved a path toward redemption. Rebecca Hayes embraced her reassignment at Millstone department stores. She traveled across regions, implementing bias training and rewriting corporate policies. She spoke at shareholder meetings about the cost of inaction, reminding executives that silence could destroy brands as much as it destroyed lives. In private, she still carried guilt. She often revisited the atrium, standing quietly where Erica had once been cuffed. She told herself, "Never again on my watch." For Hayes, the incident had burned itself into memory, but it had also given her purpose. Chief Bryant survived, but barely. The unions never forgave him for cooperating so openly with Erica's audit, but the public did. His choice to suspend Cooper immediately and embrace reform had preserved what remained of his reputation. At a retirement ceremony 2 years later, he admitted candidly, That day taught me that loyalty to the badge means nothing if it isn't paired with loyalty to the people we serve. It was the legacy he hoped to leave behind. Each year, on the anniversary of the mall incident, citizens held a candlelight vigil on the Capitol steps. Hundreds gathered, candles glowing against the night sky, signs bearing Erica's quotes. The first year, Erica attended in silence, blending into the crowd. By the second year, she stayed away entirely, watching from her office window instead. When asked why, she answered simply, "This isn't about me. It's about the people who came before me, who never had cameras, who never had live streams, who never had justice." Alone in her apartment one quiet evening, Erica sat by the window, tea in hand. The city hummed softly below. On her desk lay a small drawer filled with mementos. The letter from Marcia Lewis, notes from students, thank you, cards from families who felt seen because of her work. She touched her wrists absent-mindedly, though no marks remained. In her mind, she could still feel the cold steel, the weight of those cuffs, but instead of bitterness, she felt clarity. "They thought they could diminish me," she whispered, "but all they did was reveal the truth." She smiled faintly, not in triumph, but in resolve. Across the country, other states began adopting audits modeled after hers. Complaints that once vanished into filing cabinets now reached review boards. Budgets once spent in secrecy now required transparency. Communities once silenced found their voices amplified. And at the heart of it all was the story of a woman in a department store, handcuffed for nothing more than existing. At Riverpoint Mall, the shoe counter where it all began remained unchanged. Customers still tried on heels, cashiers still scanned items, guards still patrolled. Yet for many, the space felt hallowed, like the ground where something larger than shopping had taken place. A mother once pointed to the spot for her daughter. "Right there," she whispered. "That's where a woman stood in cuffs." And instead of breaking, she changed everything. The daughter's eyes widened. Did she win? The mother smiled. She didn't just win, she made sure we all did. And so the story of Erica Grant closed not in silence, but in transformation. What began as humiliation became history. What began in cuffs ended in change. Because sometimes, the most powerful revolutions don't start in capitals or courtrooms. Sometimes they begin in a store aisle, with a woman who refuses to be diminished.